Hello, and thank you for joining us on today's Ask Andrew show, Canada's first Facebook live streaming family law question and answer show. My name is Andrew Feldstein, and I'm the principal of Greater Toronto area firm Feldstein Family Law Group. Both myself and the entire firm practice exclusively in the area of family law, and we have offices in Markham, Vaughan, Mississauga, and Oakville in order to service your needs. Today, our special guest is Lynn Kaplan. She's a divorce doula and a divorce coach who's also trained as a family mediator, family arbitrator, and parenting coordinator. As an experienced divorce coach who has worked with clients for some time now, Lynn is here to speak to us about how spouses can separate amicably and do what is best for their families and themselves. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for having me on today.
It's our pleasure to have you on today. The first thing I've had clients ask me when there's discussions about divorce coach is, what are the benefits to a client of having a divorce coach when going through divorce and separation?
The landscape of family law is one that most people don't know. It's a complicated area, and it's also one that most of us don't think we're ever going to go into. And so the idea of a divorce coach is to help navigate and wade through that landscape. So understanding the emotional components that go along with divorce, the logistical components, where everything fits in, be it a family mediator, your family lawyer, a business valuator, a home valuator, where it could be potentially children's aid, officer of the children's lawyer. All the different components is basically to help that client, for me, to help that client be a better client for their lawyer or for any other professional that they're going through, and for them to feel more empowered and grounded with the whole entire process.
Okay, what did you do to become a divorce coach?
I trained as a family mediator at York University, and then I went on to a family arbitration program, and that was also a parenting coordination program. But prior to that, I had always worked with families in any capacity of what I had done in my life, all the way back to being a camp counselor. I'd worked with families, worked with children, worked with teens. So understood family structures and possibilities and transitions and all kinds of things like that. Along with it, I've been divorced twice. My first divorce was very amicable and easy, mediator, no problems at all. And I thought that's what divorce looked like. My second one was complicated. I learned a lot. I look at it and say that it was a very good education for what I do now. And while I was going through that divorce, I realized that I needed to understand the system of more of what was going on at that point. And that's when I started my training. And it just evolved into doing the work I'm doing today.
Okay, now I know I've seen from my reading online and had clients ask me that they say some divorce coaches are considered certified divorce coaches and other divorce coaches aren't. Are you certified? And
I am not a certified divorce coach.
Now, what does that mean, certified divorce coach?
A certified divorce coach has gone through a training program through a private organization. It's an online course down in Florida. And they basically, I imagine it's a very good program. I know of colleagues of mine that have done the program, but it is not a regulated body. So it is people that they've trademarked the name, and that is why they can use it as a certified divorce coach. I'm not saying it's not a good program. I'm just saying there's absolutely no regulating body, as there is regulating bodies for accountants, for lawyers, for mediators, arbitrators, other industries. So it is, divorce coaching is not yet a regulated body. And eventually maybe it will be, but there is no certifying body for it.
Okay, I think that's helpful for a potential client who's thinking of hiring a divorce coach to understand the significance of that term. And what you're saying is it means they took a course through this bought this private organization in Florida.
Right.
So when people come to you and they decide they want to hire you, what are the major or most significant issues that they're hiring you about? What do you help them with, and how do you do that?
Andrew, I will say that I get the gamut. I get people that are considering ending their marriage or relationship if it's a co-parenting relationship. I get people that have been 7 or 8 years out that are looking at saying, wait, things are still not working well on it, or that my spousal support will be ending. So basically what I do is I do an intake with my clients and I listen to their story. And from that, I pull out what I really feel are their needs, what they're looking for. So does it mean that if it's an abuse, either domestic or verbal abuse, that we need to start documenting things? Do we need to call Children's Aid? Or if we're on the more amicable side, do we need to start looking at what they want in the future, what they would like for children's schedules, if there's children's schedules that are involved. So really anywhere in between. I mean, I could go on giving you a long list. It's actually on my website, the services offered. It's also helping them figure out the full financial disclosure and what that means and how they can go about doing it, how to fill in the form, and not only the logistical parts of it, but the emotional parts of it. So really, truly, what I find is that anything that goes along with divorce, generally, if it's a logistical issue, it is also an emotional issue. So if it's deciding that you're going to sell the house, that is not just logically because of where the finances are, it's also an emotional part. So really looking at each client and filling the needs that they have.
So one of the concerns that I've seen people raise before is that when a client comes and meets with me, there's solicitor-client privilege.
Yes.
And so they can tell me all sorts of horrendous things and I can't repeat it to anybody, and I can never be compelled to give evidence about what they told me during that meeting. Solicitor-client privilege obviously doesn't apply to a divorce coach.
No.
It's a good reason maybe that you don't want the client saying they're using a divorce coach to the other side, because I know if I have a case and the other side said they're using a divorce coach, I may very seriously demand all your records.
Right.
And
I would think that you would. I think it would be a smart thing to do if you were opposing counsel. So what I talk about with my clients is, first of all, the first place is I say, look at it, while you're going through separation divorce, it's a good idea to stay off social media. It's if you're looking at my social media, you don't join that. You can look at it. I'll send you newsletters, different things like that. I also talk to them about that anything that we will talk about will be within the area that if I was subpoenaed to court, I could discuss it. It would not hurt their case at all. If there are concerns that I'm having about what they're talking about, I will say to them, please, you need to speak about that with your lawyer. That's something that you should have as that confidentiality, that privilege. Okay?
So
and along with it, I also tell them, if you're talking to me about domestic abuse, and especially, or not even especially, or with a child, I do have to disclose. So I will let them know from the beginning, I do need to disclose to Children's Aid. I am in that responsibility.
Do you mean that you would report to Children's Aid both domestic violence against the child and the parent?
If the child was is subject to watching, being around, then I would have to.
All right. Well, that's typical of it. The only people that don't have to do that are lawyers.
Right.
Who are acting for the party. But
I always tell the party before. I said, if we're going to discuss this, and I say, I'll let you know. I mean, but I also say, look at anybody, Children's Aid doesn't tell. It could be another parent that your child spoke to. So that's why I always, where they get nervous about the idea that, well, they'll know that I told somebody. So that's not really how it works with that.
Now, the concern where I get into as a lawyer, if someone is talking to the divorce coach, are the negative admissions that they may have. So, for example, if the client speaks to the divorce coach and says, well, yes, I did regularly hit my former spouse,
Mm-hmm.
that creates a problem because now there may be somewhere that I can get a hold if I'm on the other side of evidence that may be contradicting what they've said in the case. Or if in drafting a financial statement, I mean, do you help them draft their financial statements?
I will help them draft their financial statement, but I will always have them finish it up with their lawyer, with the law clerk.
So the obvious concern is if they give you a draft of it or they discuss it with you and on it is an admission that isn't very helpful.
Yeah. That's something that what I talk about with my clients, it's very important to me that they are within a realm of where I feel is honest and has integrity. And so let's say, for example, that I have that a parent comes to me and is angry at the other parent and doesn't want the other parent to see the child, not because they're not that they're not a good parent, but wants to do that. I will work with them and explain why you don't do that and why it's not helpful for the child, why it's not helpful for all that. If they continue to do that and I will just say, I'm not the right person for you to work with. So there are areas where if they are disclosing something that is that they don't want to, if they're not going to give full financial disclosure, they're going to omit something, I'm not the right person for them.
Okay.
Right.
I want to make sure people understand that they're not talking to a lawyer in the sense of privilege, and they need to be careful that when they're speaking to a divorce coach, they need to really appreciate that there isn't privilege to that communication the same way as a lawyer.
Exactly.
And that means if you're doing a draft financial statement and you're writing down information on it and you're sending it to the divorce coach, that may be at some point compellable evidence and it may come back to haunt you. So you really need to think about what you're saying and how you're communicating. It doesn't mean don't hire a divorce coach. It means just be aware that the same terms of solicitor-client privilege don't apply.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. I also, I do have clients where we'll work with their lawyers together. So we'll set up meetings where I will be present by speakerphone with their lawyer to help them, almost like when you have a health issue that have another a person there. And the lawyer and I will talk about before is we all know there's not privilege here. So during that conversation, we're careful about what we're doing and what we're saying and how we're handling it.
So in terms of you, when you're helping people, what aspect of their case do you find you help most of your clients with? Is there something you can narrow it down like that into a top 2 or 3 items that most people need help with?
Yeah. I do think the most helpful part, the most important thing for me is to help them move forward in a positive manner. So as challenging as it is, or as amicable as it is, because even amicable becomes difficult, is for them to move forward for themselves and for their children, if there's children involved, in as positive a manner as possible, and for them to grow from this experience, and for them to become more educated and more empowered, so that, let's say they never handled the financials before. By the time they get done with me, they will know how to run a household with finances and to be able who to talk to and about, mutual funds or RSPs or different things like that. So it really is having them understand what's going on truly and what is being said in a lawyer's letter. So I'll see clients after a while, Andrew, start kind of speaking in legalese, where I'm like, oh, at the beginning, you wouldn't even know how to do that. And they're like, oh yeah, well, and they're learning. I say it's a course. If you're going to do this, it's hard and family transitions are difficult. Learn from it and grow from it.
Now, how often do you get clients when they receive the letter from the other lawyer? I'm sure it's been me on many occasions, and they're infuriated when they read the letter from the other lawyer and they want to blow a gasket over it because they're so angry. Do you take on the role of trying to calm them down and get them to
Absolutely,
relax?
absolutely. So first we'll go through, a lot of times I'll say, why don't you send the letter to me first if you want me to get a pulse on it so that I can get you ready for it. And then I'll go through it with them and say, really, let's look at what it's really saying. So, where sometimes it'll talk about the sale of the house. I'll say, wait a minute, and that's all they see. That's that flashing red light, sale of house, sale of house. And I'll say, that's not what they're saying. They're saying that we need to talk about it and bring it up as a discussion. It doesn't mean that you won't be able to buy the other person out from it. So really having them understand what the letter says and for them to understand where that letter is going and how they would like to respond to it and what they want to discuss with their lawyer about it, what they should be asking their lawyer about those things. So I never replace a lawyer. I always have my clients get legal advice, and all along the way. I prefer, even if clients come to me and say, well, we just want to go see a mediator. I said, you can do whatever you want, but I really believe in legal advice. It doesn't mean that you're lawyering up. It means you're knowing what you're talking about.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I frequently tell clients when they come and meet with me and they say they're going to a mediator without counsel, and I tell them, you really want to understand your rights and obligations before you want to walk into that mediation. Mm-hmm. And the two examples that I usually give is I say to somebody who is a payor, your spouse may go into the mediation and saying that he or she wants X, Y, and Z if they're the recipient in terms of support. And you may initially say that's ridiculous and blow the whole mediation up. Had you met with me first, I may tell you their proposal is extraordinarily reasonable and you may want to grab it.
Right.
And I'm going to avoid you going down a rabbit hole that you really don't want to go down.
That's why I like my clients to see lawyers. I'll say to them, look, I just want to get out. I want to leave them, whatever. I don't care. And I said, in 5 years, you are going to care. So let's get you through this. I can get you through it. I can emotionally and logistically get you through the parts that I am able to. And when you're feeling like everything's, out of control, I can get everything to stop spinning so that you know what you're supposed to do or what you want to be doing. I say you can give away anything you want to give away, but you can't give it away if you don't know what it is.
Sometimes when there's discussions of giving it away, I'll refuse to be the lawyer that signs a certificate of independent legal advice. Mm-hmm. And I let the client know that I've been at this for more than 25 years, that I see the full gamut. So I've seen the client who comes in who is saying, I really want the deal. I really want the deal. Mm-hmm. And then 3 years, 2 years, 4 years later comes back in and says, Andrew, you were right. Can we do something about it? Yeah. And it's getting them to appreciate and saying, I want you to close your eyes and fast forward 5 years from now when the support comes to an end. How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to pay the mortgage on your house? And really getting them to think about that instead of the immediate need and desire they have to make a deal. Exactly. And the other thing I usually say to the person who wants the quick deal is I usually ask them if they're guilty for something. Mm-hmm. Because usually when people are making a bad deal and they want it done quickly, they usually feel guilty.
Absolutely.
And it's about...
I'll say, and then on my side will be if the other opposing is feeling guilty, I'll say, well, get to a lawyer, you maybe want to strike while the iron is hot, and stuff. So
absolutely. Those are, you drop everything, you get your disclosure done, you get your agreement out, and you try to take advantage of guilt. But, and I'll say this as a big but, the deal still has to make sense. If a deal is so one-sided that it makes no sense, then there's a good chance the agreement won't be enforceable.
Again. And that's what I talk to clients about also. As I said, if you're going to veer, work with your lawyers as explaining as appendixes how you're veering from the law and where it is. And and we sound like we're very much on the same page. I'm more of when you say that to a client, I'm more backing it up and saying, yes, that lawyer is absolutely right. That's why you should use him. And I I have a strong background in business and in negotiations. So if I have a client that's going into mediation and if they're refusing to go with a lawyer, they've met with a lawyer and they decide they want to go in by themselves, I'll say, okay, wait a minute. So let's train you in how to mediate. How much do you know about negotiations? Let's do a mini course on you learning how to do negotiations. Because if you're going up against, you have a mediator that's going to do a power balance. But if you're going up against somebody who has a strong background in the negotiations, you might not be too happy with what goes on there, and you may not be able to come to an agreement.
Well, it's not just that, because a mediation that doesn't secure a resolution, or a mediation where the mediator has given recommendations of a deal, and then the person figures, well, I'll go speak to my lawyer, and the lawyer says it's a bad deal, and they want out of the deal. Now you're really swimming against the current, because the other side has this expectation and moral suasion that there's a deal. You're the one who is breaking the deal. And when that creates that optics, it takes a lot of work to get the other side to understand what was discussed at mediation.
Right, and to get it all back on track. They may say they don't want to go back to mediation. Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Usually they don't, and then you're litigating. And quite frankly, that particular mediator is usually burned anyways, because one side has completely lost confidence in them. Mm-hmm. And why does somebody want to go to another mediator?
Yeah.
So you really being prepared and ready for mediation and understanding what your expectations are can be really important. And I'll say this to people: when a mediator says the financial issues are really simple and easy, I just have to go do a divorce mate calculation, in most cases, it's not. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to make that assumption, and you don't want to fall down the pathway of thinking your case is really simple and easy when it may very well not be. As I know one mediator once says about calculations, it's garbage in, garbage out. Anybody can put the garbage in of a number. It's arriving at the right number that is the difficult and complex part of the steps, and you really need to know how to do that. The other things I've seen divorce coaches be helpful for as well is, I think of not just getting that letter that makes somebody angry, it's the timing of it as well.
Yeah.
I think we're frozen, Stephen. Everybody.
I think that we are frozen. I think Andrew's frozen. Am I frozen? Okay. Andrew's frozen. Okay. So I would say, wait, Andrew, say that again. Was the letter, getting a letter? Okay. Okay. Andrew, what was you were talking about getting a letter?
Well, I want to apologize to my viewers.
Yeah,
my computer froze. It's the first time it's happened on mine. I apologize. We have fiber here. It's not supposed to freeze. But what I believe I was asking about, because I went on for a while, was sometimes people also get letters from the lawyer. And we discussed this earlier, how people get upset when they get the lawyer's letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can help them with the emotional.
But there can be more to it. Sometimes people are really strategic. And I've seen this happen a lot of times, where somebody won't have a lawyer respond for 3 months. And I think of it right now, because we're approaching the winter holidays.
Ooh.
Wait for your lawyer to respond on the day you're going out of town with your kids. And you've been waiting for that response. And the first thing you're going to do when you see your lawyer's letter, you can be sitting on the plane happy, or at the resort happy, but you see that, you take out your phone and you start reading it. And you just gave them a big win, because you've just blown a day or two of your vacation reading something. So you got to realize that some people will be very, very strategic of when they approve their letters from their lawyers, to ruin vacations, maybe you have a significant business event. And where a coach can be helpful is trying to let you know.
That is very much, it's not even the letters from the lawyers, it's the emails they receive from the other party. And we talk a lot about that. One thing I think is really important that I talk about more and more with my clients is they'll come to me and they'll talk about very challenging relationships in their marriage. And they'll say, it'll be great when we live separately, it'll stop. And I'll say, if you're parenting together, it's not going to stop. It's going to change. And and you won't be living with them. So let's make your home your sanctuary. But emails, conversations, letters, things like that are still going to come. And so let's work on how you can manage those. So whereas if you have the children for the weekend, you don't really need to look at any of their emails probably, because there's probably nothing urgent, right? If they have shown a pattern of sending annoying emails or emails to frustrate you on weekends that you have the children, to disrupt that. So we talk a lot about that, exactly the trip. I mean, I just had a client recently that she got a letter on her birthday. It was sent to her on her birthday. And, it was absolutely designed that way. And basically, we had talked about it before. So I say, look, this is what I learned from Rambo 2. It's not that the hits aren't coming. It's how you take the hits and keep moving forward. So if you're ready for those kinds of things, if you say, look, these are things that crop up, and it's not with every relationship. Some people are very thoughtful and trying to do this in the best way possible. But if you see that that's the dynamics, so prepare yourself and know that those hits are coming, and you keep moving forward. And that's something that, you don't need to be doing emotionally with your lawyer. It's emotionally for me to get you grounded, and then you go to your lawyer and work with your lawyer on, okay, how do you respond back to that? What is an appropriate way to do it?
I've actually said to some clients when they expect something on their first day of vacation or their birthday, I say to them, well, why don't you turn to your friend or your new partner and turn to them and say, so what do you think are the odds that I'm going to be getting a letter today?
Exactly.
Going on vacation, and turn to them to something you're going to laugh about, have a discussion about, and appreciate it from not getting aggravated and realizing that unless your lawyer says you got to open it, don't. Like I've had one client, we knew every time there would typically be a letter at the time he was going away. Mm-hmm. And I got to the point of saying to him, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll send you the email. You can see it's from me, and I will indicate whether you need to open it or you don't need to open it. And if you don't need to open it, don't get aggravated and just get a laugh out of it.
Yeah. I find, and it's so hard for people to even think about it, as I say to my clients, eventually, if you're in a difficult one, we're going to start looking at it with humor. And one of my clients said to me that he saves all his stuff for when he does it, when he starts being a stand-up comedy. Does this stand-up comedy routine. So I said, I mean, with all of my clients, I said, maybe eventually someday that's what we'll be doing. We'll be all on the road doing a stand-up comedy routine on all these things that happen. And it's basically, it's interesting for me to see a client who really, gets any kind of email, anything, and is so tense from the beginning, and understandably tense. You go through a process with them, and eventually at some point, and I never know when it is some point, all of a sudden they're laughing about it. It's somewhere down the line. Is it a month? Is it 2 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Exactly what you're saying is they're ready to look at it with humor and then take it on and deal with it and not have it affect them.
Then it becomes a lot easier for them to manage the process. And the other thing I say to clients too is the position they're in fresh after the separation isn't the way it's always going to be. For myself, when I separated, my kids were 9 and 7. They're 16 and 14 now. Mm-hmm. The communication that I need to have with my former spouse is greatly reduced now with a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. It's not what it was when they were 9 and 7. You're not coordinating all sorts of little kid stuff. Mm-hmm. My 16-year-old, it's easy. She's going to be staff at overnight camp this year, and that's about it. And the few things we have to talk about with her are pretty short and direct. Mm-hmm. And for my son, it's mainly if he's sick and he's missing a hockey game when he's in one person's care, letting the other parent know he's not going to be at hockey that night, so they don't go and watch the game. But it's a lot simpler than it was when they were younger. So the message I try to say to people is, you might be in the throes of it now when kids are 6 and 4, but this isn't forever. Right. And it's about getting to when they're older in a way that when your child is graduating from school, getting married, significant milestone events, that when you wake up in the morning and you're going to that event, you can truly be excited for your child, and your child doesn't need to be stressed about managing mom and dad.
Absolutely. And that's what I talk about with clients is, And if it is stressful for the parents to learn how to deal with things, for one person, you can't manage another person, but for one person to learn about how they can manage themselves and what they can say to their children, work with their children, so that their child isn't going to feel uncomfortable. It's the kids that get into university that then they get to make the choice of whose parents' home they're going to, that they're not so much on the schedule, or as you said, as they get older and going to events and having those kinds of things, and not having anybody feel uncomfortable with them.
Now, I should say, I see that we're out of time. So, Lynn, I wanted to thank you for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you. For anyone interested in learning more about Lynn Kaplan and her work, you can visit her at her site, which is www.lynnkaplan.ca. The next Ask Andrew show is on January 20th at 1 p.m. If you have any requests or ideas for future shows, please email them to us at info@feldsteinfamilylaw.com. Thank you for watching, and a happy holidays and a happy New Year's to everyone.
Thank you very, very much, and happy holidays.